This video was recorded at the Spring Institute, March 2021. Our guest speaker in this video is Jerry White, Professor of Practice at University of Virginia.
I'm a professor of practice at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville, in the United States. And today I'm talking based off of a class I teach on religion, violence, and strategy, mostly about the genesis of strategy, as you can see in the slide in front of you. And now we're going to dive deep into the fifth day of creating strategy, and that's resilience. Let's say you have an affirmative vision. Let's say you've made difficult choices of what you're going to do and not do to bring about change. Let's say you're an aligned team with your values and your powers in place and your understanding of systems change and also your skill sets on your team to make something happen. And you analyze the stakeholders and have a balanced coalition and a balanced approach to blend the elements of what I call fire, water, air, and earth for change. So there you're sort of finished with sort of you're setting out your architecture and your design for systemic or transformational change. And of course you start and nothing goes right. Everything seems to go wrong. The best laid plans, of course, ... So this is a question of resilience. What do we do? And this isn't, there's some controversy over the word at times. You know, are you just expected to be resilient when awful things happen to you? Or you have a very challenging disability or impairment or disease? You're living with it every day and you're just supposed to smile for others? Like, no. Or you've been attacked in war and everyone expects you to be resilient, you know, chin up. Absolutely not. The core here is in the context of strategy, we must navigate obstacles and crises as well as our own missing pieces to make up a team effort that might bring change for humanity. And so this is, I'll talk about personal resilience, but the purpose for this discussion is for you all to start to apply it to collective resilience. What does this mean for you, your family, your community, your workplace, perhaps your country or the world? So just trying to broaden that aperture as we talk about resilience. So first I'll start with a question. Life is full of challenges, right? And we see a world, you know, even if we look at the year 2020 with COVID, the pandemic, as well as economic collapse, climate change challenges. So my question for you all on the slide is, can you recall a date in your own life, but beyond 2020 this year, when you or your community fundamentally changed, as if your life was split in two, before the date or after the date? So just sort of scan your social, emotional, or familial horizon or past. I bet you have more than one, but for the purposes, just for the exercise, just pull up one that comes to you. It could be as specific as the day or the year where life changed forever. And then, you know, as we go on to discuss, what do we do with these dates? Can you discover the significance of having an anniversary, even if it was traumatic? Even if it was an explosion in your life? And then once you sort of look at that date, the death of a loved one even, a divorce, just like the messy pieces of life, could we honor them? Can we make them respectful anniversaries that have formed and taught us? How do we honor these formative anniversaries in our life? And I don't want to be glib about it. It's not actually an easy thing, but I think it's an important challenge. Here's one of my dates. That's me when I had hair. I was 20 years old in an Israeli hospital, recovering from April 12th, 1984. The day I had gone hiking with friends in the Holy Land, walking in the footsteps of the prophets on like a beautiful sunny spring day. I think I was humming a hymn, "It Is Well With My Soul," with my two best friends, camping on a spring break, and suddenly everything exploded underneath me. There was a huge deafening sound, and I was flipped on my face. I didn't even know what had happened to me. I had no idea. I'd never thought of landmines. Couldn't imagine why they'd be in this beautiful hillside. So again, a before and after moment, literally an explosive one. And my two friends, Fritz and David, they flipped me over, and they after they yelled at me not to move, because it was dawning on them we were in a minefield. And if there's one mine, there are plenty of mines, right? It turns out this minefield was a Syrian-laid minefield using Soviet munitions and landmines, placed in the 1960s or 67, when I was only 4 years old. An Irish Catholic boy growing up on the South Shore of Massachusetts in America. I wasn't part of the Arab-Israeli conflict that I knew of, until, as some say, this landmine found me, or just waited 16 years silently for its next victim. So I was 20, young, and suddenly was thrown into the world of my own disability, my own challenges, my own pain, being in a hospital on my junior year when I was 20, leaving Brown University, studying in Jerusalem, probably the best time of my life. And here was with an Israeli soldier in physical therapy every morning, after painful tortures of removing shrapnel, amputations of my lower right leg, blood transfusions, and just pure survival. So I think that's the starting point, right? Like, you gotta live. We gotta stay around long enough to find the sequel. That's the challenge for all of us. Like, stay another day, another month, because it's amazing what happens. Doesn't feel amazing, doesn't look amazing, but somehow things change. They always do. Nothing stays the same. So here's one of the sequels to that story. This is August 1997. And there I am with a little less hair 13 years later, this time in Bosnia-Herzegovina, on a log with the Princess of Wales and other landmine survivors. So the photograph has the princess in the middle, beautiful as usual, and she's the only one with two good legs. The rest of us missing one or two. That includes Malik, a 14-year-old Muslim boy with his arm around me on the right. He was Prince William's age. And Žarko, to the princess's left, 12 years old, Serbian, lost his leg. They both were just following their fathers, either gathering firewood or going to play with friends. And the landmines left over from the Bosnian wars were left there, and they got blown up. Both of them losing a leg below the knee, like myself. And then Ken Rutherford, my partner in crime, he had been a relief worker in Somalia when his Jeep ran over a landmine, and he ended up losing both his legs below the knee. So again, we're introduced into a world, and the Princess of Wales is introduced in a world not just staying in her palace, Kensington Palace, and just being a princess all day. She used her power, her gifts, standing in her compassion and her light and her courage to leave her comfort zone, like I think we're all called to, in service to others, for tikkun olam, as they say in Hebrew, for a repairing of the world, for a shift of humanity and systems. So it was here we introduced to Diana to so many people, and there was one particular case where she went into a home of a young widow whose husband had just died a month earlier after the war, surviving, and then going fishing on a sunny Saturday and reeling in a landmine on the bank of a river that exploded and killed him. So we were making the point too, we think it's about us, those who missing limbs, but they also say that losing a limb is like losing a life, an intimate part of yourself, losing a loved one. And so here was a widow distraught with her deceased husband's mother living with her and two young children crawling all over Diana's lap with everyone crying. Just listening to the story, hearing the pain, not much to say when raw surviving is in your midst and pain is in the room. So after that, we crawled back into our little minivan, and Diana was quite silent for a while. And she sort of was pondering, and then she said, you know what? Every survivor, every landmine victim you introduced me to tells me their date. April 12th, 1984. Ken said December 16th, 1993, when he lost both his legs in Somalia. And then the princess says, me too. July 29th, 1981. And then she burst out laughing and threw her head back, because I didn't realize it until she explained that was the day she married Prince Charles. So the point is before and after moments. I don't know, maybe you were a homecoming queen once, or a princess, or you got married, or you had a kid, or you had an explosion. That even good things, if we live in the past, good things can be troublesome as well. A wedding day. And yet Diana showed that very strong, what I would call social and emotional intelligence, combined with, I call it trauma intelligence. That without a PhD in psychosocial whatever, or behavioral science and counseling, she knew how to boil it down. Trauma is a before and after moment when you lose all control and life is never the same. So let's start with you all. We're back to blank sheets of paper. Pull one out, and I've had you think of a date or a time. So get back into, I don't want to, I'm not a counselor either, but just think about, what does victimhood mean to you? We all can be victimized, right? We can all go through unfair experiences, some awfully traumatic. And sometimes we have to look at other people who are victims, and they seem to wallow somehow. We don't want to judge anyone in this exercise, but just on a piece of paper, both for yourself, get into that space of when you feel like a victim or you've been put upon unjustly. And what does that feel like in your body? And what words come to mind? And then after spending just a little time on that, again, these are projection games to get at some wisdom if we can. When you look at other people that you maybe think are acting like a victim, I don't know, some complaining mother-in-law, or some politician who plays the victim card left and right, or someone living in the past still, again, 9/11, there's a time where a country is victimized. When victimization turns into victimhood, quote unquote, with this picture on the slide, with the blank, what are the characteristics or the hallmarks of victimhood as you see them, collectively and individually? You may break into teams and discuss this as a group. But for now, I'll move quickly to some of the things that have come up as we've surveyed landmine victims and people with disabilities and war and genocide victims around the world. And, after interviewing, let's say, 10,000 survivors of conflict and war, I started to notice that there were hallmarks. Why is it that some people remain victims and we don't judge or blame things that you see in war? If someone stood on their head and sucked their thumb for the rest of their lives, we would say that's okay. Without agenda, except like our hope for healing. But it is interesting to observe when victimhood takes hold in our lives or when we slip back into it in our language. So some of the hallmarks we have learned and I have alluded to include, as I've just brought up on the screen under the category of victimhood, number one, stuck in the past. This awful thing has happened. I'm still in a minefield. I'm not, but in my mind, I could be. Or I should sue the Russians who made the mine that I stepped on, or the Syrians who laid the mine that I stepped on, or the Israelis who forgot to fence off the minefield or demine. Who do I blame? Who do I sue? What if I'm just, so that leads to other hallmarks: resentment, blaming, self-pity, and a spirit of taking, a spirit of entitlement. This has been done to me. I am due something. The universe owes me, or someone's got to pay. That's the tough thing about this universe. I don't think it quite works that way, whether in justice or in healing. It's about me not realizing my leg's not growing back. And I'm not even going to blame myself by being a dumb tourist who stepped on a landmine on a stupid hike in Israel. So I note that inside myself, I have exhibited all these things at different times or all at once in my life. This is humanity. Stuck in the past, nostalgia, self-pitying, whining, that tone we hear in our voice or others. We usually note it in others before ourselves. Poor me. It's actually worse than Eeyore, that character in Winnie the Pooh. It's like, it's my birthday. No one knows it. It's not just pessimism. It's actually more corrosive. And resentment, what does that do to your insides? Anger, fear, blaming. So you'll have your own list, but this is from my research and experience of interviewing thousands of survivors over the course of 10 years in about 20 different countries. So then we say, well, how do you get out of victimhood? Is there a roadmap? And so here on our, with our compass, there's a slide showing what does survivorship look like? And this is what I sort of call and wrote about in my own book called Getting Up When Life Knocks You Down: How to Overcome Life Crises. This is the 5 steps, the secret sauce, the recipe for resilience. You've got it as fast as possible. And again, it's not really steps and it's not really so simple, but I want to break it down to you what I learned from my own experience as a survivor, and also what I interviewed and listened and heard from the wisdom of survivors around the world who had actually moved on from victimhood, normally 5 to 10 years of really working to compost the trauma into fertilizing their garden of life, and what I call survivorship here. And survivorship to me, I define as the ability to live positively and dynamically in the face of or with disease, disaster, disability, death, destruction, disruption. I could go on with all the D words, but I'll spare you. But you get the picture. So number one, there are 5 steps here listed. Number one, face facts. This awful thing has happened. I can't turn back the clock. I'm not a starfish. My leg's not growing back. And I would add, emotions are facts. People don't think of it that way. There's the math of your problem. I can't move. And then there's the feeling of the problem. I'm depressed. I want to die. That's a fact. A survivor expressing or a victim expressing a fact like, I feel violated. I hate my abuser. Those are not to be dismissed. Those are also in your body, in your emotions, in your trauma system, and they are facts to put on a piece of paper. What are your facts, guys? Go back to your date, pull out that piece of paper, and just list a couple facts about your circumstances or your anniversary or something you're working on right now. I think this is the hardest step, perhaps. It's like they say in psychology, breaking through denial, or having to like do the math again on what really happened and how you really feel about it, and being as objective as you can possibly be. This happened, then this happened, then this happened. This is the consequence or the result. These are the feelings. These are the casualties. Fact, 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 fact. You could probably go on for a few pages or go into some old journals. Okay, choose life is what I'm trying to do with my humor sometimes. These are tough topics, but choose life means like, okay, this is awful thing has happened. What am I going to do about it? How do I escape victimhood and the trap of forever hating and resenting and feeling depressed? Is there a way out? And choose life is as old, as the Bible or Deuteronomy. Choose life, not death, this day. Back to choose to stay. Stay in this path of survivorship and resilience. Please. No one can make the choice but you. So I have one story in El Salvador. There's a friend of mine I've known for many years and worked on with disability rights. His name is Jesus Martinez. When he was 16, during the Civil War there, he was going along a path and stepped on a landmine and lost both his legs above the knee. In horrible pain and understanding what this might mean for like a man in El Salvador without legs and living with disabilities, he found a landmine next to him in the minefield, picked it up and started to smash it against his chest, hoping it would explode and kill him. The just huge pain of not wanting to choose life, choosing death, and wanting being taken out of his misery. It didn't work. So he sees a guard coming by, a military guy with a machine gun. He says, please, he begs the soldier to shoot him. Shoot me. Please, I beg you. The guy refused. So Jesus is taken to the hospital, where he also spends months. And one day, in a funk, but in less pain than that awful first day or anniversary, he hears laughing outside his window. And he looks out and he sees in the distance like 3 guys playing wheelchair basketball, throwing around a basketball and hoops and just laughing and competing. And that was his wake up. It's like a conversion. I want that. I want to laugh. I want to be mobile somehow, if I can. I want to feel again life. So he chose life that day, and thank God, because he went on to work with us on Landmine Survivors Network, work on the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, the Landmine Movement, the Cluster Munitions Movement, the human rights of all people and victims of war, survivors, and those living with disabilities. So he's a champion, a father. I think he's even a grandfather right now. I'll have to check. That's called life. Stay long enough, choose life, enough days that the sequel can come. Okay, that means number 3, reach out. The third step, we have face facts, choose life. Number 3 is reach out. No one survives alone. No one succeeds alone. We are collective belongers, social beings. In fact, it took 2 guys to carry me out of the minefield. It took nurses and doctors. When you're in trauma, very often it feels so alone that you don't see that there's an ecosystem conspiring for your survival that you may or may not understand you're working in and with. So, but as you come out of it, you say like, oh, I need to reach out. So I remember one day being victim-y in the hospital. And the social worker, Dina Goldstein, says, oh, I see we're feeling sorry for ourselves today, Jerry. She told me a story about her husband in a wheelchair back home, injured from the Yom Kippur War that I knew nothing about. And she goes, well, why don't you go and start like visit some of the other soldiers in the hospital ward, maybe the burn ward, to get out of yourself. And I'm not sure how good comparative suffering works. Like, well, at least you have one leg, I'm missing 2. Or, it's like the disability Olympics. It's like, or it could be like women's birth stories sometimes. Like the story is so like, I was in labor for 570 days or hours. Or someone says like, well, you should see, not only am I missing my legs, I have a heart murmur. I don't know, like each person is different. Losing a leg for one person and stubbing a toe for another. So, but it did help me to understand that I don't want to be that self-pitying person, and that I understand there's much worse suffering around the world. And so as a thought experiment, at least, I learned to reach out and see others in their pain, to step out of my own discomfort zone into true discomfort zones. And so one day, as an example, a guy had done that to me in the hospital. I'm lying in the bed, and there's a room of like 3 other soldiers, and this guy with blue jeans walks in, saunters in, and says, hey, what's your name? I stepped on a landmine too, in Lebanon. Can you tell which leg I lost? And because he was wearing blue jeans and had a really perfect and smooth gait, as he walked back and forth in front of my hospital bed, I literally couldn't tell. And he goes, that's my point. The problem is not down there, pointing to the legs. It's up here and in here, pointing to his head and his heart. And he then asked, like, well, okay, have you had do you have your knee? I said, yes. He goes, good. Can you still have kids? Well, I have 4, so something was working. And he says, you know what? What you have is a nose cold. You'll get over it. So I laugh now thinking of like that tough Israeli love in your face. But for me, he probably knew the audience, a 20-year-old guy who is sort of competitive, who doesn't want to feel sorry for himself. And I thought as he left that hospital room, when I never saw him again and never knew his name, I said, if that jerk can do it, I can. So I did. So he reached out in that tough way. I learned to reach out, and it became the model of peer support around the world, of survivors helping survivors. Maybe you're only like 2 months ahead of your buddy. You just got your first prosthesis and you're saying it hurts, but you get used to it. Whatever. Tricks of the trade of abilities and disabilities shared. Okay, that's the third step. We're going to get through 5. Number 4 is get moving. So we have number 1, face facts, choose life, reach out, get moving. No one's going to do your rehab for you. No one can get out of bed for you. No one can, take a shower for you. You have to do it. And if life gave me this lemon or landmine, you got yours. I don't want yours, and you don't want mine. And I don't know why they're apportioned out of like that you have to do it. Your physical therapy is yours, not mine. Your mental health decisions are yours, not mine. Your autonomy of choice of person and personhood is yours, not mine. So together, we get moving with others, right? We're reaching out. We do need help and we share in collective trauma and in recovery. However, like choosing life, get moving is yours. Do the laps, do your resilient sit-ups, so that number 5 can happen, which is we found in all of the studies where people, the difference, why was that guy with no arms and no legs and no home smiling and laughing? What was his secret to survivorship? Where someone else with maybe one missing leg in Bosnia or Angola was morose, depressed, understandably so. And normally we found the secret sauce to resilience and survivorship was giving. Step number 5, give back, pay it forward, whatever. In small ways, big ways, reaching out is part of giving. Facing facts is part of giving to yourself. Get moving or body movement and exercise, also a way to give and care with compassion for yourself. Eating well. But giving back is something that as you did it for others, it showed, it built the smile, your serotonin, your dopamine, whatever went up. The research has shown that food, sex, sleep, and giving, altruism, are keys to our uplift. So go have a good meal, some good sex, and also a good night's sleep. But maybe after going online and giving to someone, surprising someone with an email or a text of encouragement, sparing a penny or a shekel or a pound, it doesn't matter. It's like leadership. One practices. You don't suddenly become a philanthropist if you haven't been a giver. And you don't suddenly become a super survivor or a leader without being generous. So that leads to understanding a new slide about post-traumatic growth. So not just the trauma of it all. There's trauma every way and every day. But I think from my experience and learning that we heal through our dreaming. We heal through our hope. We heal through that growth of the steps of survivorship and resilience. So very often we focus on the media and everyone on the victim experience, what happened to you, as opposed to the survivor invitation. Where did you find your strength? How did you get through? That's amazing. Surely you can summon that inner power now. What do you think? Advice isn't so helpful, as we know, in the face of trauma, but the invitation for growth, the opportunity for post-traumatic growth, not just PTSD, super important to think about. So moving on the home stretch here, just to say it's not just Jerry White and my findings or my writings. When I did look at the research on resilience, and particularly some of the pioneering work by Stephen Southwick and Dennis Charney at Yale University and later at Mount Sinai School of Medicine, they came up with this list here on a slide of the 10 hallmarks of resilience from their research and their case studies. And I'll name them. And as I do, I want you to think about which one of these is like genetic or something out of your control. You ready? Number 1, optimism. Number 2, altruism. 3, having a moral compass. Number 4, faith and spirituality. 5, humor. 6, having a role model. 7, social support. 8, facing your fears. 9, having a mission. And 10, training. What do you think? What strikes you about this list? I hope you're seeing or imagining that, in fact, at least 9 of the 10 are in your control. Resilience is something you get in shape for. Resilience is something you practice. Resilience is something that your team can do. It's actually performative. That's why sometimes people find it troublesome, because is it unconditional love? We all have to be resilient, damn it. No, but the research is showing that there are hallmarks. And what are these hallmarks? Social. I dare say that maybe only optimism, one could argue, you might be wired for in a birthright. Some people just seem to be born cheery. Others more like Eeyore. But pessimism isn't bad. I would argue that cynicism can be a disease that stands against survivorship and resilience and leadership. But here I would say altruism, moral compass, all of these things are things you can learn, you can do, you can join, you can think through, you can practice. So it's on us. And here we have a slide back to our icon hero, Nelson Mandela, from his autobiography or memoirs, Long Walk to Freedom. So he doesn't know. I'm fundamentally an optimist, he writes. Whether that comes from nature or nurture, I cannot say. Part of being optimistic is keeping one's head pointed toward the sun, one's feet moving forward. There were many dark moments when my faith in humanity was sorely tested, but I would not and could not give myself up to despair. That way lay defeat and death. Choose life, reach out, get moving, give. And that's the essence of leadership and flourishing, which I think is the other exercise you could do, not just the negative feelings and all the hard work we have to put in our own personal rehab or collective rehab. It's, what does flourishing feel like to you? If you're going to be a flourishing leader or just citizen or persona, what would that feel like in your body? Just imagine, take out another sheet of paper and do an exercise. Imagine, what does flourishing mean to you? How does it show up in your mind's eye and in your body's feeling and in your ecosystem? What are the hallmarks for you? In my case of researching how to move from victimhood to survivorship, through survivorship, as this graphic shows you, to flourishing leadership, there were 5 hallmarks that are just the mirror opposites or required throughout. These are the inner superpowers, right? Back at starting of who's your icon and what do you stand for? My name is Jerry. I desire flourishing. And I will tap into my courage, my humor, my empathy, my enthusiasm, and my generosity. And you can play with your own words of the hallmarks of leadership and flourishing for you personally, or for your mentors, or for your team members, or for the politicians or leaders you love in the world, or your superheroes. Who are you? What do you stand for? And what are you going to do about it? Again, some questions you might consider in an exercise, thinking more, as I said earlier, from the personal to the professional to resilient teamwork. Some questions on, facing facts. This slide has the 5 questions according to the 5 steps. How does a problem or challenge show up in your life, your community, your corporation, your team, your nation? How's it showing up? Where's the rash? Choose life. What are the core values with an affirmative vision you are trying to use to inspire change? Number 3, reaching out. Who is missing in your outreach to build a more diverse coalition to deliver the change you seek, to be the transformation collectively? Number 4, get moving. What are your 3 main lines of effort and action to achieve system shifts? They could be narrative, policy, legal, structural. That's another conversation or lesson perhaps, but I think in 3s because I have a simple mind. If you can move 3 lines of effort, 3 main things. If you're doing comprehensive 17 things or 17 sustainable development goals, that's not a strategy and never will be. Comprehensive is not strategic. Tell me what you're not going to do, and then focus on your top 3. And then tell me of the 3, which you think is the most important and must have, at least as a thought experiment. And lastly, giving back. What would be different because of your service to humanity? If your strategy or your plan was successful and your coalition made change happen, what does that look like and feel like? Back to collective flourishing? Give back collectively. So I'll just close here on my own reflection that, like, even after whether teaching or doing or trying to run like campaigns that humble me, when I look back of having the privilege of co-leading and co-sharing and coalition and collaboration, a bunch of C words, to make change happen, I got sort of exhausted doing so much good work. So not to pat myself, my mom was increasingly proud, some of my friends, but I was increasingly feeling my tank was getting empty sometimes. And I thought, what's wrong here? How come I'm so tired of performing on a world stage and putting on good operas with happy endings? Like, it's not just me, but like there's a lot, there's the casting and the scripting and the people and the leading ladies and the coalitions and the ensemble cast, and keeping your eye on the prize from policy change and legislation and law and thriving. And I was like, I'm just like, why am I unhappy with my success? Why do I feel hungover from my workaholism? And it wasn't noted, or actually like it was rewarded, like, oh, you share in the Nobel Peace Prize, you share in like a list of awards. How could my own 4 children criticize me if dad is off doing noble things, saving the world? They'd be like, no, dad's like, you understand why your father's gone so much. So was I a good father, bad father? I don't know. I did what I knew, and I still do. But here I show a slide of a beach with shells and beautiful view, especially since I love the ocean and find it healing. And I thought of resilience and why suddenly even having to talk about resilience made me tired. So I probably made you tired, just having to listen and take notes. And that's normal, because it's an effort. But I thought, if I wanted to become a leader and a person of love, an unconditional love for myself and for others, that was the next level I wanted to achieve, why was I so hard on myself and on others? Why did I have to serially achieve? What if today is enough? What if right now is plenty? And that's the spirit of, like, I remember a board member telling me, Jerry, you remind me of a donkey with a carrot in front of it, like after it, and it's just chasing the carrot. You've done enough, you can relax. Like, what's the carrot? What are you chasing? You can relax and take a vacation. And I didn't let on how much I didn't like that analogy or picture of me as a donkey. I think I'm better looking. But I knew she got right to the heart of it. And I had to start asking myself, why? What is the carrot? And I started different. She had a new trick, which I share with you and I shared with some friends, because it tricked this busybody into relaxing and being still. She goes, listen, do you have a spiritual discipline of any sort? I was like, I don't know, I'm spiritual. I'm a person of faith. No, a practice, a discipline. And I was like, what do you mean, like yoga? Being a little snarky. And she goes, no, how about trying this? Like tomorrow, just take 60 seconds, 1 minute, and sit still and just notice your breathing. That's it. To a minute a day for the first month. And then try 2 minutes a day, every day for the second month. And 3 minutes for the third. And so by the end of a year, she said, or she told me, you'll have what I call a spiritual discipline or practice. She made it so easy, and I couldn't even come up with an excuse. 12 minutes a day, not having to go to like yoga camp. I mean, I later on then was so competitive, again, I get missing the point, that I, the next day, sat down with my cup of coffee and my timer on a seat, and I was like, oh, I got this. I shut my eye. Oh, take off my glasses. Let's see. I have to get to work in a little bit, but that's fine. Got plenty of time for 60 seconds. Oh my God, like 20. Okay, start over. I couldn't do it. Talk about crazy. 60 seconds sitting still with your breathing. I was like, I am spiritually obese. I am clogged. I cannot, it's like doing one spiritual sit up or push up or stretch. 60 seconds. I had an epiphany that I was ill. No one was telling me I was ill. The world was rewarding my obsessions, my advocacy, my activism, my actions. And that was it. So I, again, I was like, I'm going to learn this. And I went to the breathing gym and boot camp, and I did a 10-day Vipassana. And I was like, I'm going to learn how to breathe, damn it. Like if it's the last thing I do, it's a skill and a discipline. And without it, how can you sustain change? Your own internal change, that your work is only as good as simultaneously your inner work and outer work. I don't believe it's like you do your inner work, you become so enlightened that then you do great outer work. I believe all is one, and that has come through breathing as well. And so that's why I leave and I said, oh, maybe that's it. That's it for all of us, like the 60-second soul. And to show you how ill I was for so long, like when I was a young father, my eldest daughter, Kate, when she must have only been like 3 or 4, I'd play games with my kids, and I was one of those awful fathers who like never let their kids win at anything. Like they should learn how to compete. So there I was playing some silly game with blocks or whatever with my daughter, and she, I'm into it, and she goes, "Daddy, Daddy, relax, relax." And I was like, she's just trying to be cute. She's mixing up her words. Does she mean be or relax? Like, I've never heard of relax. And that was another moment where like, even my 4-year-old, 3-year-old could see that I was too much. But it's just what I was then. Like, she laughs. But I was like, you're just trying to be cute so you'll win at the game. But that's it. How the hell, that's the final step. The 6th step to resilience and survivorship and to flourishing. The 6th step, which I did not write about or did not know about till after, was relax. Today's enough. And I hope that will help each of you in your journey as well. Thank you.
Thanks very much for watching. You can like and subscribe to our channel below. We're currently working on a British Academy funded project looking at the lived experience of disabled people during the pandemic. And you can find out what we're up to at tendproject.com or on Twitter at tendproject. Thank you.